Imagine waking up one morning to find that in just a few moments, everything you know, your home, your school, your city, could vanish in a blinding flash. That fear is not a distant story, but a reality the world has faced, and it is the reason we must understand the history of nuclear military attack. The origins of nuclear weapons can be traced back to the early 20th century, when scientists first began to unlock the secrets of the atom. Discoveries in nuclear physics, particularly the understanding of nuclear fission in the 1930s, showed that splitting an atom's nucleus could release an immense amount of energy. This scientific breakthrough caught the attention of governments at a time when the world was moving toward the brink of global conflict. As World War II unfolded, fears grew that Nazi Germany might develop such a powerful weapon, which led the United States and its allies to pour resources into a top-secret research effort known as the Manhattan Project. Under the guidance of scientists like Robert Oppenheimer, Enrico Fermi, and many others, laboratories in places such as Los Alamos, Oak Ridge, and Hanford worked tirelessly to turn theory into reality. The project brought together thousands of scientists, engineers, and workers, making it one of the largest coordinated scientific efforts in history. After years of intense research, the project succeeded in creating the first atomic bombs. The first successful test, called Trinity, took place in the New Mexico desert in July 1945, proving that the weapon could be used in warfare. This moment marked the birth of nuclear weapons and signaled a new era in human history, where science and war were deeply intertwined. The development of the atomic bomb was not only a response to wartime fears, but also a demonstration of how quickly humanity could move from scientific discovery to destructive application. The origins of nuclear weapons are therefore a story of both human ingenuity and the sobering reality of how knowledge, once uncovered, can be used in ways that forever alter the course of history. In August 1945, the world witnessed a level of destruction that had never been seen before when nuclear bombs were dropped on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. On August 6, a single bomb named Little Boy was released over Hiroshima, and in an instant, the city was transformed into a scene of fire, rubble, and unimaginable suffering. Tens of thousands of people were killed immediately, while countless others were left gravely injured. Just 3 days later, on August 9th, another bomb called Fat Man fell on Nagasaki, unleashing the same horror and bringing widespread devastation. Entire neighborhoods vanished in seconds, schools, hospitals, and homes crumbled to ash, and fires swept across what was once thriving urban life. Survivors, later called hibakusha, faced injuries from burns, collapsed buildings, and shattered glass, but they also suffered from the invisible force of radiation poisoning, which caused sickness, hair loss, bleeding, and in many cases, slow painful deaths in the days and weeks that followed. Families were torn apart, with loved ones missing, injured, or gone forever. The devastation was not only physical but emotional, as trauma and grief spread among those who lived through the attacks. Long after the bombings, the effects of radiation lingered, leading to cancers, birth defects, and generational health problems. The destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki shocked the world and demonstrated the terrifying power of nuclear weapons, leaving a scar not only on Japan but on all of humanity. The devastation of 1945 became a haunting reminder of how quickly entire cities and communities could be erased, and it forever changed how people thought about war, peace, and the responsibility that comes with human invention. After the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the United States stood as the only nation with nuclear weapons, but that dominance did not last long. In 1949, the Soviet Union successfully tested its own atomic bomb, sparking a tense competition that came to define the Cold War. This nuclear race was fueled by fear, suspicion, and the desire for global influence. Both superpowers sought to outmatch each other not only in the number of weapons, but also in their destructive capacity. The development of the hydrogen bomb in the early 1950s escalated the race further, as these new weapons were hundreds of times more powerful than the bombs dropped in 1945. With each advancement, the doctrine of mutually assured destruction took shape, meaning that if one side launched a nuclear attack, the other could retaliate with equal or greater force, ensuring catastrophic consequences for both. This fragile balance of terror created an atmosphere of constant tension, where even a small miscalculation or misunderstanding could trigger global devastation. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 brought the world dangerously close to nuclear war, showing just how precarious this balance really was. At the same time, the arms race extended beyond sheer weapon stockpiles, leading to innovations in delivery systems such as intercontinental ballistic missiles, nuclear submarines, and long-range bombers. The Cold War nuclear race also influenced politics, diplomacy, and culture, as citizens lived under the shadow of potential annihilation, practicing civil defense drills and constructing bomb shelters. Despite periods of negotiation and treaties aimed at controlling the spread of nuclear weapons, the rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union continued for decades. The nuclear race was not only about weapons, but about power, fear, and the struggle to prevent one of humanity's greatest dangers from ever being unleashed again. The existence of nuclear weapons had a profound global impact, shaping not only the strategies of nations, but also the fears of ordinary people everywhere. Unlike traditional wars fought with armies and guns, the threat of nuclear war meant entire populations could be destroyed within minutes, leaving no room for defense or recovery. This reality created a deep psychological effect during the 20th century, as people grew up under the shadow of mushroom clouds and the possibility of sudden annihilation. Governments and military planners had to think differently too, balancing their desire for security with the awareness that any direct conflict could escalate into a catastrophe for the whole world. This tension gave rise to the policy of deterrence, where nations relied on the fear of retaliation to prevent enemies from attacking first. The global spread of nuclear weapons also altered diplomacy, as countries with these weapons gained influence on the world stage, while those without them often felt vulnerable. Beyond politics, nuclear fear became part of culture, inspiring books, films, protests, and movements dedicated to peace and disarmament. Families built bomb shelters, children practiced hiding under desks in schools, and communities carried a quiet awareness that their lives could change in a single moment if war ever broke out. At the same time, international organizations and peace advocates pushed harder than ever for dialogue and treaties to prevent disaster. The very presence of nuclear weapons forced humanity to confront its own capacity for destruction and raised questions about morality, survival, and the responsibility that comes with such power. The impact of this fear was global, transcending borders, languages, and politics, uniting people in both anxiety and a shared hope that the weapons would never be used again. As the nuclear race escalated and the destructive potential of these weapons became clearer, leaders and communities around the world began to pursue arms control and peace efforts to reduce the danger. The first steps came in the 1960s when nations recognized the need to prevent the uncontrolled spread of nuclear technology. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, signed in 1968, became a cornerstone of global arms control, aiming to stop new countries from acquiring nuclear weapons while encouraging the peaceful use of atomic energy. Alongside it came the establishment of test ban treaties, such as the Limited Test Ban Treaty of 1963, which prohibited nuclear tests in the atmosphere, outer space, and underwater. These agreements reflected a growing awareness that cooperation was essential to survival. During the 1970s and 1980s, the United States and the Soviet Union, the two superpowers with the largest arsenals, engaged in negotiations like the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks and later the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaties. These talks led to meaningful reductions and set frameworks for verification, building a fragile but important sense of trust. Beyond official negotiations, peace movements grew around the world, with citizens protesting nuclear weapons, organizing campaigns, and calling for disarmament. The 1980s saw massive demonstrations that reminded governments of the public's desire for safety over rivalry. With the end of the Cold War, further treaties like the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty emerged, although not all were fully ratified or implemented. Despite ongoing challenges, these efforts showed that even in times of division, nations could agree on the urgent need to limit the threat of nuclear destruction. arms control and peace efforts remain a continuing journey, demonstrating humanity's struggle to balance power with responsibility and the hope for a world where cooperation triumphs over fear. Today, the world still lives under the shadow of nuclear weapons, even though the Cold War has ended and the number of active warheads has declined from its peak. The United States and Russia continue to hold the largest stockpiles, while other nations such as China, France, the United Kingdom, India, Pakistan, North Korea, and possibly Israel maintain or pursue their own arsenals. The spread of nuclear technology has kept alive the fear of proliferation, especially in regions of conflict where political tensions run high. At the same time, international treaties and organizations continue working to strengthen safeguards, prevent illegal transfers, and encourage disarmament, though progress is often slow and complicated by mistrust between nations. Modern technology has added new layers of concern, as cyber threats, artificial intelligence, and advances in missile systems raise questions about the security and control of nuclear arsenals. The present moment is marked by a fragile balance, where deterrence still plays a central role, but the risks of accidents, miscalculations, or deliberate escalation remain real. Looking toward the future, the world faces a choice between continuing to live with the possibility of nuclear disaster or finding ways to finally reduce and eliminate these weapons. Activists, scientists, and global citizens continue to call for disarmament, and some treaties like the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons represent bold steps in that direction, even if major nuclear powers have yet to join. The future may depend on whether nations can build enough trust to prioritize collective security over competition. At the same time, younger generations are inheriting the responsibility of shaping policies and attitudes that will determine whether nuclear weapons remain a permanent part of human history or are left behind as relics of a more dangerous time. In looking back at the history of nuclear military attack and the journey it has taken humanity on, we see a story that is both sobering and instructive. From the origins of discovery and the destructive use in 1945, through the tense decades of the Cold War, to the ongoing challenges of the present day, nuclear weapons have forced people everywhere to confront the reality of their own power and vulnerability. They have changed how nations interact, how wars are fought, and how societies imagine their future. Yet alongside fear and devastation, there have always been voices calling for restraint, compassion, and peace. Efforts at arms control, the work of peace movements, and the continuing dream of disarmament show that even in the shadow of destruction, humanity can reach for hope. The history of nuclear weapons is not only about what has been lost, but also about the choices still ahead. It reminds us that the same human ingenuity that unlocked the atom can also build understanding, trust, and cooperation. The responsibility lies with each generation to ensure that the mistakes of the past are not repeated, and that the future is shaped not by the force of destruction, but by the strength of humanity's shared desire to live in peace.